All right, welcome back. Yes, as you see there, Dr. Mukhtar Muhammad joins us next on the program. He is the National Coordinator and Technical Head, Presidential Steering Committee on COVID-19. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning, Chamberlain.
And many are wondering, what are they doing talking about COVID-19? I mean, the steering committee stopped meeting a long time ago. Many assume there was nothing to talk about. Everything is hunky-dory. All's well. We're all moving ahead. So perhaps we should start from there. What's been going on with this committee? Is it really and truly nothing to say? Everything is over?
Well, that is not very correct. The committee has been meeting. At least we've had technical meetings. The various agencies have been meeting and monitoring the situation in the country. As you know, the idea of the steering committee is to work with the different agencies in government and also, you know, the civil society organizations and other NGOs in the country to mount a formidable response to COVID-19. So yes, we've not been doing the public part of what people see, which is the press briefing. We've not been providing or changing the guidelines and making announcements like we were doing earlier on, and that is for a reason. It is because we really need to have a good control of the situation before we can change the protocol or make announcement to the public. Yes, in the background. Well, the thing is, you don't want to go in a haste, and because there is so much claim, like you mentioned, Nigerians have forged ahead. Nigerians have
not the world, as a matter of fact.
Well, the world has put COVID maybe behind them. Nobody is using a face mask. Nobody is doing the safety measure precautions. But is COVID still around? Yes, there is COVID. Are people getting sick with COVID? Yes, people are getting sick. Are people dying from COVID? Yes, people are dying from COVID.
In Nigeria?
In Nigeria, yes, there are. Even you know, within the last few weeks, we recorded some cases. The reality is that the magnitude of the cases has gone down, not like where we were last year around this time. Hospitalizations have gone down. Mortalities have gone down tremendously, not only in Nigeria, but also around the world. But is there a risk of contracting COVID-19? Yes, the risk is still out there.
That risk, I mean, isn't that risk going to be with us for the rest of our lives? Because it's not that that risk is as huge as it used to be, and rightly so, because that's why the world had moved on from it. It's only if it's in that dire scenario that we can employ those protocols, isn't it?
The world has to move on. We cannot really remain stagnant or remain suspended, you know, with the fears of infection, with the fears of hospitalization or fears of mortality. Life has to move on, but we have to do it safely. And we have to do it under the control. You know, in public health, you really do not rush. This is, remember, coronavirus is a novel virus. When this thing started 2 years ago, nobody knew exactly what shape it was going to take. And therefore, when you are removing the barriers and when you're removing the restrictions, you also have to be careful. You have to monitor holistically what is going on in the society. And mind you, you said, yes, we are sitting down, not doing anything. Mind you, there are countries, there are countries that rushed. There are countries that rushed to say that COVID is, to declare COVID is over. But a week later, they came back and they said that, no, they made a mistake, and the technical committees, you know, continue to sit down. So this thing has to be given a whole global approach.
I understand that. So tell us, so are you saying that this steering committee will be on what, in perpetuity? How long?
No. It's an ad hoc committee. It's a committee that was set up by Mr. President, you know, to address those emerging issues. You know, when COVID-19 became a pandemic announced as a public health concern, you know, in the world. So the committee is working for a certain period of time, and really the committee wants to tidy up the work, hand over to the agencies. The Federal Ministry of Health is capable of doing its work. The Nigeria Centers for Disease Control is really braced up and is strengthened, to be able to monitor. Our primary health care development agency is doing a fantastic job. The states, have been trained. Right now, a lot of things are going on. When you have a shock like COVID-19, what you would want to do is to build a sustainable, lasting response, such that not only COVID, if you are faced with another situation similar to that, your country will be able to respond.
We thought that is why we have the NCDC. So NCDC can handle all of these things. So the steering committee doesn't have to exist in perpetuity because, when the government winds down, it will be assumed that they've gone with the government as well. So that's NCDC being there should continue from where the committee, wherever they stop. But for the big question is, lots of people have been asking us time and again, why do we still have to upload as a requirement when you're coming into Nigeria health certificates concerning COVID if you're coming in, because other countries have no such requirements, it's just us?
Well, so let me take you back in history. For border control and border surveillance, there has always been health declaration forms. We had yellow fever, we had meningitis, we had cholera, even during the time of smallpox. All these are things that, made the world to realize that there is this cross-border transmission of infection. And every country has its own set of rules. So it is not true that it's only Nigeria that is doing health declaration form. Many countries are doing it, depending on
concerning COVID specifically.
So the thing is, what we did was the health declaration form was universal. So when COVID came, we all added COVID to the health declaration form. And right now what we're doing is we are now reversing the situation to try to go back to the normal health declaration form without, if COVID no longer poses risk, internationally.
That hasn't happened yet.
Well, so like I told you, it is a process. It's not something that you have to look at the parameters. And I'm glad, to announce now to Nigerians that we have monitored the situation in the last 6 months. And what we have seen is consistently, we have seen a sustained decline in the number of new cases of COVID-19. We've also noted a sustained decline in the importation of cases of COVID-19 from other countries. We have noted consistent decline in hospitalization. We have recorded no mortality in the last 40 days in Nigeria. And therefore, these are the indices. They have to be sustained. So with this now, we are braced up. We are ready, to look at what needs to change in the current regulation. And it's not only Nigeria. There are many. We review this on a daily basis. We work with the International Civil Aviation Authority, ICAO. They provide guidelines about the requirements for other countries. Yes, the developed countries that we know, probably because of their level of high vaccination and booster doses that they have taken, some of them realize that it is no longer required, to do testing, to upload your vaccination. But still, many countries do it. As of yesterday, we have about 85 countries that still require people to do pre-departure testing. We have about 49 countries that still require, if you arrive in their countries, you have to do a PCR test. We still have countries, about 30 of them, that require people to do quarantine on arrival. And this includes Canada, China, even in Africa, a lot of our African countries, including Nigeria and Ghana, have some form of protocol or another. But we understand, we bear the pressure. We know that Nigerians call us, especially people who travel a lot, to say that, oh, we've been everywhere around the world. Nobody is doing this. Why are you still doing it?
Especially if it's, if it's done in a manner that is cumbersome, if it's in a manner that, because as you said, largely within Nigeria, the entire country seems to have moved on from COVID. We now treat it like every other illness. And yes, I might still believe you that indeed COVID is still around. I mean, my experience in the last 2 weeks or thereabout was anything to go by. But indeed, while that is, you know, we do not seem to experience any other thing, even the simple hand washing mechanism, which was in place during COVID, and many people thought might be an opportunity to introduce hand washing for good, especially hand washing in public for good. That has also not been maintained. Why is it just this obnoxious uploading of, you know, health requirements that comes up only when you want to travel, not for any other thing, but only when you want to travel or when you want to come into Nigeria? It feels like a stumbling block for many people.
So, Mope, let me just, yes, Nigerians are tired, and, you know, people don't like doing things that are additional that they see as burden. But regarding the health, uploading that health declaration form, it's not really, it's something that you do under 2 minutes. And you can do it before.
2 minutes?
Yes, you can do it under 2 minutes.
Super longer than 2 minutes?
No, absolutely. No. I'm sure maybe you have an internet challenge.
Almost endless.
So the third is, you look at the advantage and what you gain
I think
out
that's
of
them
it.
trying to do it now and see if you can do it in 2 minutes.
So if we don't have that health declaration form, the danger is that we will not be able to track not only COVID, but we're having Ebola now in Uganda and some other parts of Africa. You want to track people who are, who are at risk of, transmitting this infection to other people. So with this health declaration form, you will be able to know when the person arrives, where he's going to be located, his phone number, his address, and the system will pick up between the Federal Ministry of Health and the NCDC to notify the final destination, whether it's a state or a local government. We have district surveillance officers who will pick up that person almost immediately. Diseases like Ebola can cause havoc in a matter of hours.
Indeed. We know, we have experienced Ebola before in Nigeria, and thank God for the sacrifices that some of our medical personnel made. Dr. Stella Dadevo leading the team of those who eventually pay the ultimate sacrifice in that regard. We understand that these kinds of things can happen, but if being able to pick up such a thing is dependent on filling a form, how strong a surveillance mechanism is that? Wouldn't it be more practical to have officials who are on the ground if, for instance, we have suspicion of flights coming in from certain areas of the world into Nigeria, to have officials on the ground monitoring people who come from those flights, rather than having people just generally fill a form which you're not even sure if anybody is keeping track of?
So unfortunately, diseases don't act, like that. People can come, they are asymptomatic, they don't have any symptom. You will not be able to see any signs on them, and they'll come and pass, and they'll interact with normal people. So in public health, what you do is that during that period, those people can still transmit the disease. So if you have this contact tracing mechanism, the form only helps us to do that contact tracing mechanism. And to help, for example, in a plane, if you come now, we know your seat number. We know who is sitting next to you on your left, who is sitting next on your right, who is in front of you, who is behind you. Those people are at risk already. And with that form, we'll be able to track them and monitor them, because they are likely, they can also get infected, during the transit, during the flight, and they can also infect other people. So that helps us to pinpoint the people, because the disease does not occur immediately. If you can find somebody symptomatic,
people only report what it is that they're feeling at a particular time. So if they too are feeling quite well when they travel, aren't they going to be reporting how they feel in that form? I haven't filled the form. I don't know what is, but I imagine if you will say things like, "Do you have a headache? Are you do you feel fine?" etc. And it is how a person is feeling at that time that he or she would report. Isn't that correct?
No. So it has several components. That part is one where you express, the places you have been to. For example, now, any person who has visited Uganda, for us, it's a person of interest, because we know Ebola is being circulating in that area. He may not have contracted Ebola. He may not have any symptom, and we cannot stop that person from coming into Nigeria. But once he comes into the country and we realize that he was, on the plane with someone who had an active Ebola, or after he arrived, he started expressing symptoms, quickly that person needs to be isolated. He needs to be
Is this form obtainable for those who travel by road into the country?
It is available at our land borders. It is also available. It's a compulsory form, and it has been since 70s. It's not a new.
No. This specific one that the airlines request Nigerians to fill if you're coming into the country, is it required? Do they fill it? Those who travel by road into the country through our land borders?
Yes, it is being done. The port health officers at the border, they complete that form for the persons that are.
Because I've had two separate people who came in and they were not required to fill that form. And we're doing this just to ensure that, look, with any agency that does things to safeguard lives of people in this country, we appreciate it, we understand it. So we're not doing this to lampoon any agency or anything, but it's to see if this is necessary and if it's still working. We ask this because several people have called in and said, look, they requested us to fill this form. As a matter of fact, it was even so long, many don't even know that they're required to fill it until they get to the airport. And so when they're asked and then they start filling, some don't even finish filling. They don't complete the form and say, then they tell them, well, it's up to you and your country. So they board the plane. And then they come to the country, they don't even insist on the form, they pass. So that's why we are, is this still necessary? Because people are not taking it any seriously at all.
For every rule or for every regulation, there are people who try to cut corners and not try to follow it. It's not really something that we're very proud of, but we know that Nigerians like to do that a lot. I tell you what is happening. Our current protocol, what it mentions is that if you are fully vaccinated, you don't do anything. You complete that health declaration form and you submit it, and you are allowed to board. If you are partially vaccinated or you are unvaccinated, that is where the issue comes. Okay, that's why you need to be tested before you board the plane. You need to be tested after you arrive on day 2 and 3.
You still need to be tested before you board the plane?
Yes, 48 hours before, yes.
Because many people don't even conduct any such tests. They can't even find as many places as they do when they are coming into the country.
There is a difference between what is in the regulation and what people actually do. And not only us, people going to Qatar now, ask them. Okay, you have to show your vaccination card. If you don't, then you have to do a PCR test for 48 hours.
That's perhaps maybe a different scenario. But for this one, because at the moment, when people are required to fill this kind of forms, countries don't even insist. I remember specifically that the steering committee maintained that countries that don't require any of this protocol, we equally reciprocate. We lift those measures. We don't require those. We did it when it was in England. We did it with the States. But the form has remained, and people are not complying. But from what you're telling us now, it looks as if the form will stay. It's not going to go.
So I don't know why we are, because completing the health declaration form is something that is good for us if we understand the advantage. It is to protect you, to protect Nigerians, and to protect people and their families. We only do that. I mean, it has been there before COVID, and it will continue after COVID. It's not that. It's an international health regulation.
What you're doing is enlightening Nigerians as to why that is important. But as my colleague pointed out, a number of people assuming that, COVID has gone with the wind, are surprised to now find out just when they get to the airport that is still a requirement. So how are you conscientizing and still letting Nigerians know that, yes, whilst we continue to encourage you to stay safe in the country, this will continue to be a requirement, so that it's not some surprise that is sprung up on, if you're traveling out of the country, you have a number of things you're planning to put in place, and then you get to the airport, and that is also something that you now meet as a surprise, and maybe sets you off balance, or internet is not working, or, then frustration sets in. How are you ensuring that, you are able to reduce these incidences of frustration? Government is not out to frustrate people, I imagine.
Absolutely.
So if they're not, I mean, how are you ensuring that you address whatever frustrations people feel when they begin to see these kind of situations when they're about to travel?
So we have looked at the situation over time, like I mentioned. And what we've been doing since April is to try to relax, a gradual relaxation of, all the restrictions. For example, in April, we issued the guidance where we said the use of face mask is discretionary, especially if you are in an outdoor place. And since that announcement, I think many people have even dropped face mask altogether. Many people interpreted that. I was interviewed on that. The PSC said we have lifted all restrictions. We said no, we have not lifted all. So it's also that you have to do it in measured ways. We removed restrictions about public gathering in closed spaces. Before we said for some places it has to be less than 50, depending on the size of the place. We removed it in April. And, when we did that, everybody now, everything was open. And even before then, people had already, put...
Yeah, but, Dr. Musa, we are still... Wait, let me ask. Are we still required to wear face masks when we're traveling locally?
No, it's discretionary.
But the airlines insist that you must. That is a regulation
in
from
a closed
the
space.
NCA.
Yes, in a closed space, it is recommended that you wear your face mask.
So when we're traveling, we have to wear it?
Well, if you feel, for example, in an aircraft, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that. But for the airline regulation, they still require you to do that. For NCAA, what they do is they have very clear, it is not, you don't give that kind of instruction. That is what they made us to understand. That is either it is there or it is not there.
So what's the committee saying?
So we have met and we are reviewing the situation, and we are putting some timeline on it. We are going to lift a lot of the problem that people consider as restrictions, and we're going to get them down, and we'll make the announcement very soon. Very soon,
okay, yes. Because people who have been vaccinated are also saying they still require them to complete the form, even though they've been vaccinated, even with their booster shots. Are they supposed to still fill the forms?
Well, if you're talking about the health declaration form,
they call it COVID form.
Well, so okay, we are changing that. We are removing a lot of the COVID-related. Yes, so that is maybe the information the public needs to know. We have taken steps now. We are making some modifications. We have simplified the form. It is going to be for general use for all other diseases, just the way it was before COVID. Okay. And that is what is going to be effective very soon.
Okay, so that announcement is going to come. They're going to change all of those. So we'll look forward to that, so that...
They heard it first here.
That's right. There you go. Dr. Mukhtar Mohammed, National Coordinator and Technical Head of the Presidential Steering Committee on COVID-19. Thank you very much indeed for coming on, and all the best.
Thank you for having me.